readers' attention nowadays with people focusing on Instagram and Twitter, which are short forms. Earlier, we used to enjoy writing. I used to write blogs, which were like long form blogs, and so it's very difficult now to keep people engaged because they think they want a shorter version of TLDR version of it or Twitter version of it. So it's not just about writing, but there's a problem here with readers' attention. So how do we capture that?
See, that's something I struggle with every day because I'm trained as an academic. Now, then I became a fiction writer, and now I am in the media space, and I struggle with because my sensibilities are still very academic. So I struggle with this. You have to do a blog in 1 minute. The span of attention is 1 minute. I struggle with this all the time. Okay, so I think this is very detrimental to our society. This 1 minute attention span. At the same time, this is something which we also have to cater to. So, but at the same time, there is, Nagpur Literature Festival. You have an event every month. You have a book club in Kolkata also. Though its book clubs have died out, there are a few. But I was so happy to know that you have a book club. So. Yep. Some things will never die, and you have to just keep propping that up. No matter how much it's the insta age, you have to keep propping that up. And it's my hope that books will always enjoy a resurgence. They will always be current. So it's different constituencies, and we have to keep propping up books, propping up leadership.
A healthcare consultant with a diverse experience in psychology and management. He has 11 years and uses experience of 11 years and uses most powerful modality named numerology to help his patients and clients. His hobbies include reading, music, gardening, watching suspense, thriller, romantic movies and series. He is a part of Nagpur Toastmasters Club, Rotary Club of Nagpur North, Book Adda, Senior Director Consultant Training of BNI Nagpur, and currently the BNI Connect Coordinator of Krypton. Welcome, Mr. Ali Akbar Mehmood. Introducing the author in focus, author of non-fiction. Vidarbh Literary Festival, where we celebrate non-fiction. Sharmistha Gooptu. Sharmistha Gooptu completed her BA in History from Presidency College, Calcutta, and her MA from Calcutta University in 2000. She was awarded the Century Fellowship in 2002 at the University of Chicago to do a PhD on the history of Bengali cinema. She completed her doctorate in 2009, and the thesis was published by Routledge in London and New York as the monograph of Bengali cinema and Another Nation, and in India by Rowley Books in 2010. Dr. Gooptu has offered courses at the University of Toronto and was visiting fellow at Trinity College, University of Cambridge in 2012. Dr. Gooptu is editor along with Boria Majumdar of South Asia Archive, a new, fully searchable digital archive encompassing thousands of pages of valuable research and teaching materials, providing online access to documents ranging from the mid-18th to 20th century, which is an extensive source for research students and scholars across the humanities and social sciences. Sharmistha Gooptu is a historian and writer. She is author of Minoka Has Hanged Herself, a fictional book released in 2019, and Unspoken, Fiction Again 2023. She is also editor of academic journal South Asian History and Culture and South Asian History and Culture book series. Welcome, Sharmistha Gooptu.
Good evening once again, everyone. I would request the audience who are sitting at the last, if you can please forward. Thank you. Right, at the outset, Mark Twain said, if you want to change the world, then pick your pen and write. So if you are here in this session, can I see a pen in your hand? Yes. Thank you so much. The basic question when it comes about writing is, how do you write? all of us sitting here, maybe somewhere, want to become a writer or an author, or maybe write something very short, say a blog. The question, which is very basic and which comes to my mind, the first one is how to write. This is what I would like you to convey to the audience, how to write.
So again, my apologies, and thank you for graciously waiting. Now, how to write? That's a really broad topic, and I started my career as a non-fiction writer. My PhD was on Bengali cinema, and subsequently I've written on Hindi, Bollywood. So I started out by writing non-fiction, and I've written extensive non-fiction. I've been an editor, so my training is as a historian. I have a background in academics. I'm editor of an academic journal and a book series. So that is my background. More recently, I have branched out since 2019. I have branched out into fiction writing, but I have not stopped being a non-fiction writer, so I am both. And I remember when my first fiction, Menuka Has Hanged Herself, was launched. I attended the Vidarbha Lit Fest. That was your first year of this Lit Fest, and we had a wonderful session there. So, how to write? That's a very broad question again, since this is primarily a non-fiction Lit Fest. See, as I said, this is a very broad topic, so you can start anywhere. Now, we shared some questions and you talked about topics. Now, a topic can be anything that interests you, anything that drives you, anything that motivates you, and something that you feel able to live with. It's like your life partner. You'll be living with that topic, working on it for a year, 2 years, or whatever. So it should not be a whim. It should be something that genuinely interests you so far as the topic is concerned. And I'll say one or two things about modalities of writing, because we're trying to keep the sessions short and pack as much into it. So modalities of writing, I can see a lot of young people here. Some I'm sure are aspiring to be writers. How to write is start to write. I've seen a lot of people when I was doing my PhD at the University of Chicago. There were a lot of brilliant people, and I used to be in awe of them. My cohorts, senior students who read such a lot, who talked such a lot, who theorized such a lot, but they never got down to writing. So they spent, and in America, it's not like the UK system where your funding is very time bound and then you have to get out of there. You have to finish your thesis, and if you don't, you're kicked out. No, in America, you can keep working, you can keep teaching, you can keep getting funding, and so people put off the writing process. They don't write, they read, and I'm not saying that reading is a bad thing. The more you read, the more you learn, but you also need to start writing. So for starting out writers, do please start to write. The hardest step is to start to write. Write every day. I know every day is not always possible. Writing is not the only thing a writer does. We have families, we are parents, we have other things, we can be sick. But try and write almost every day, even if you write 400 words, even if you write 250 words, you don't have to write, you don't have to set yourself. I quite disagree with that. I mean, I've heard people say, I make it a target to write 1,000 words every day. I cannot set that kind of a target for myself. I set myself smaller targets, but my target is to write every day, because every day you refine how you approach your craft. Every day you refine yourself. So let me just pause here. I have a whole lot of other things to say, but...
Right. So the first thing is start writing is what I get. Write every day, no matter what your words are. Now, when a person is preparing or writing for a non-fiction book, how do they approach the research for it? I think the books that we are hearing to now by the authors, there's a lot of research into it. So how does one get into that mode?
Yes, so it's not necessary that you're going to always write a book. You can be writing a journal article, you can be writing for a magazine. But for everything, obviously, you have to have your research in place. So it really depends what you're writing, whether it's a full length manuscript or an article, or um, you do your research as best you can. You use a diversity of sources, not just textual. I mean, you can use interviews. You can check one interview against the other. I mean, oftentimes sources tend not to be reliable. Like, for instance, when I was working on the film industry, people say things to cover up some things. You know how things happen. So and so happened in my time, but this is so there are lobbies playing against other lobbies. It's an industry. It has a darker side. It has a seedier side. This was the 1940s. So you have to check against other people, what other people are saying. You have to see what was written. You have to see the films themselves. So you have to research. Diverse is the word. When you're researching, you have to diversify your sources. You have to research as diversely as possible. That's about the research.
Right. So basically, when you were writing your book, what were the kind of primary sources and how did you ensure accuracy of the information that you were getting?
Yeah, so as I said, I mean, accuracy, it's not always accuracy that we're after. It's after, it tells you what people then were thinking, how they were thinking. It's not always accurate. I mean, accuracy is a very, it can be accurate. Accuracy is, there's not science, right? Not everything, I'm not a science person, so my accuracy is not a scientific accuracy. But another thing I'd like to say is, I just talked about the sources. You have to make your sources as diverse as possible. The other thing is, when you start to write, if you're a first-time writer, especially if you're a non-fiction writer, I suggest, if it's a book is a much bigger undertaking. Even if it's an article, know in your mind what you're going to write. I should have the overview in my mind, maybe points noted down or something like that. I mean, oftentimes, in my earlier career, I would see I've written half a chapter and then I don't know where I'm going. And so I think it's very important to have the larger picture. I'm not saying you have each and every point noted down, but you have your larger schema, your larger framework chalked out, so that, this is where I'm going at the end of it, and this is how my argument spans out. Otherwise, you're left floundering, and that's when the writer's block sets in. That's when you think, I can't go on, I can't do it. You put it away. And a book is, of course, a much broader undertaking. And if you are writing nonfiction, then it's best that you have your structure in place. You have your notes. These are the chapters. And yes, of course, you change it around you. This chapter goes, the order of the chapter changes. Your argument might also change a bit, but it doesn't change. It doesn't become from A to Z, like it doesn't change so fundamentally. So you have to have all that in place. And that's where fiction writing is different from nonfiction. As far as I'm concerned, because nonfiction tends to, it is possible to have that kind of a framework more in place with nonfiction than, because fiction tends to be, at least for me, it's more inspired. I know for instance, my last book, Unspoken, which released in the middle of last year, I knew it was going to be a story of a mother and a daughter. It's about a mother who has dementia, a daughter who is going into her mother's past. I knew these things. But then the story evolved as I was writing. But fiction is also about feelings, emotions, introspection, dreams. If you're dealing with a character that has dementia in your book, then a lot of it is going to be unreliable, and you work through that unreliability, through the fiction. But nonfiction is not like that, right? So there's less of that, and it's easier for you to plot it out. So I suggest, to reduce your own angst during the writing process, you have your frame board in place.
Right. So you spoke about the writer's block, or say the creative struggle at times when we're actually writing. So how does one overcome that? What can we do about it?
Okay, so writer's block. I'm sure anyone here who is a writer, would-be writer, has been writer, wants to be a writer, everyone knows what writer's block is like. It's, it's like a virus which kind of grips you and then you can't get out of it. I suggest what I felt. See, I've tended to be a solitary worker. a lot of the times, and I realized later how much it helps to have a peer group around you, a cohort. I'm not saying that you keep bouncing your ideas off people. That can be counterproductive, because we have a saying in Bengali, "Nanamunir nanamot," mane meaning as many people, that many opinions, and then where do you stop taking opinions? You go with your gut at a certain point, but it helps to have a core group who can, that's why, I was just talking to one of your organizers, and I heard that you have a reading club or a reading group which culminates in this festival. So it's very important to have that kind of cohort where you can read your drafts, and that's what the PhD process also is about. You have workshops. When I was at the University of Chicago, we had something called the South Asia Seminar and something called the South Asia Workshop, if I recall. This is many years back. So the seminar was where invited scholars would come and present, and the workshop was where work in progress. If you were writing your dissertation, you could read a chapter, and that kind of thing. So I think it's very important to have that and not write in isolation, because it helps to bounce your ideas off. If you're also, if someone is telling you you're writing rubbish, if you can stand up to that and make an argument for because that's what you will have to do once your book is published. You will have to, once your book is published, you will be in lit fests or whatever. So you might as well start to do it at an earlier stage, and it always feels good to be able to defend your work. At the same time, there has to be a line drawn to that. So, after a point, you go with your gut.
Right. So, with the books that you have written, have you given yourself the time that I'm going to complete it within this date? So, into a basic question, that if I have to write 100 words or 200 words every day, maybe by the end of these many months, I'm going to get my book done. So is there something that you've worked with your books?
Yes, so this is something which we all, anyone who's, and it's not necessarily a book writer, anyone, assignments, class assignments, college assignments, timelines are so important, especially if you're in journalism. That's like really time bound.
Okay.
And I wear another hat as a media professional. That's more recent, of course. My husband and I, we have this digital media company called Rev Sports. And so the media, again, it's very time bound. So yes, timelines are important, but when you're writing a book, it's obviously less tight than in media. Set yourself a target. I, for once, have mostly extended my given, but it's not like I've extended it by 3 or 4 months. It's maybe like 1 month or 15 days. People do extend their timelines, and I think, if you're not going too far, like I want a 6-month extension, that's not good news for the publisher as well. But put your best foot forward, take a few extra days, but at the same time, try to stick. So I think you should set yourself, I'm going to write like maybe 500 words or 1,000 words a day. It's good to set that kind of target, but oftentimes it's not possible. And for me, at least, it tends to be a very inspired process. I might not write my 500 words today, but I might write 2,000 words tomorrow.
Okay. So for the budding writers who do not have publishers or publications attached to them, what would be one advice that you would give them, that no matter what, you have to keep going?
Yes, you have to keep going. It's good to see. It's very different now with the digital space. You can be a blog writer. There's so many diverse ways of finding a publication. Amish, he was a self-published. Everyone rejected him, and then he self-published, and see what he is today. So I think we must never give up. If he had not thought of self-publishing, he's one of the people who have revolutionized, authors who have revolutionized promotion of their books. So just try and find new ways. Not everything suits everyone, or not everyone is able to do everything, but you should find what you feel able to do.
Right. Thank you. So with the blog that you mentioned, now with so many topics and so many books around and so many writers and authors around, what would you suggest would be a compelling topic for a book, or maybe say a blog? Or how would one find out that?
See, it's very saturated. Fiction is more saturated than, both are saturated, but non-fiction, still, it's a bit easier. Fiction is it's too saturated. But you have to decide what drives you. It's if we were 30 years ago, it was much easier to be a published author. It's much more difficult now, but you just have to find what drives you, what motivates you. And and that's for everything. I mean, if you were talking about blogs, I mean, blogs tend to be very algorithm driven, because as I said, as I'm also running a digital media company, SEO, search engine optimization, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with that. Don't be algorithm driven, don't be driven by what everyone is doing. Go with your instinct, go with your inspiration. That takes you a longer way than anything that is current in the market.
Right. So basically, go with the passion.
Go with the passion, and of course, you have to also have a sense of what the market wants. I
Market
mean, you
wants.
can't be at a super tangent.
Okay. Right. So while you were writing your book, what made you think of the title that you've chosen? What made you come up with that title?
You mean all the titles or any?
Anyone book.
Anyone? A title has to be, even for chapters. When you break up your chapters, if you're naming a chapter, a title has to be typically again, it's different for non-fiction and it's different for fiction. But if we are talking about non-fiction, your title should typically encapsulate what the book is about. I mean, it shouldn't be so obscure. I mean, many things sound. See, oftentimes in the writer's mind, we are so deep into our work that we think everyone will understand, even if we put a very obscure and kind of title to it. We know how it's linking up in our mind. The reader will not. And publishers tend to put people who are displaying your books in the bookstore, they will put it into boxes. They don't know what's in your mind. So it's best that your title should be very encapsulating of what your book is about.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you so much. So now let us open the forum for questions from the audience. If you have any questions, you can raise your hand on how to write maybe a book, maybe a blog, or maybe even a small article.
Journals, magazines, yes.
You said like to write daily, basically. So when you were in that process, is there any specific thing you used to talk about, write about, or whatever came to your mind?
So when you're writing, depends on what you. So if you're writing your PhD, or if you're writing a book, or maybe even if it's like a journal submission, then I mean, I don't know how long it will take you to write a journal submission. Like if it's an academic article, with the research, it might take you 1 month to write. It might take you longer to write. So just keep what I mean daily is keep a regular writing practice. And if have a frame board, have your article, have your thing chalked in your mind, and then write regularly. And when you sit down to write, refine what you wrote yesterday, because when you take even the night's distance, one sleep away from your what you last wrote, you see it through different eyes. Then you are able to refine it. Revision is as important as writing. You refine it. I have a daughter now, a 10-year-old daughter, and I keep telling her this, that revision is as important as writing. So you refine what you wrote. You see it with new eyes when you wake up. You see, I wrote this. I mean, I think of things that I wrote. I see things that I wrote 5 years back, and I say, I wrote this. So I think and oftentimes, if you have a writer's block, I think it's important to take a couple of days away from that, and 2-3 days, and then you swim back into it. So what I'm saying is just keep a regular writing habit.
Right. Yes, we have.
So my question is around how do you manage to keep readers' attention nowadays with people focusing on Instagram and Twitter, which are short forms. Earlier we used to enjoy writing. I used to write blogs, which were like long form blogs, and so it's very difficult now to keep people engaged because they think they want a shorter version of TLDR version of it or Twitter version of it. So it's not just about writing, but there's a problem here with readers' attention. So how do we capture that?
See, that's something I struggle with every day because I'm trained as an academic. Now, then I became a fiction writer, and now I am in the media space, and I struggle with because my sensibilities are still very academic. So I struggle with this. You know, you have to do a blog in 1 minute. The span of attention is 1 minute. I struggle with this all the time. Okay, so I think this is very detrimental to our society. This 1 minute attention span. At the same time, this is something which we also have to cater to. So, but at the same time, there is, you know, Nagpur Literature Festival. You have an event every month. You have a book club in Kolkata also. Though its book clubs have died out, there are a few. But you know, I was so happy to know that you have a book club. So. Yep. Some things will never die, and you have to just keep propping that up. No matter how much it's the insta age, you have to keep propping that up. And you know, it's my hope that you know, books will always enjoy a resurgence. They will always be current. So it's different constituencies, and we have to keep, you know, propping up books, propping up readership.
Right. Okay. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. And to end this session with a beautiful thought by Stephen King, who says, if you want to be a writer, you must do two things. One is read a lot, and number two is start writing. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Again, apologies for the change of schedule, but not my fault.
Thank you, Sharmistha Gooptu, for your valuable insights on writing. We move on to the final closing for today, the keynote by Mr. Goofap. I'm sorry. I now invite Mr. Sachin Jagirdar from our very own Sachin Jagirdar from VLF to present a token of appreciation to Ms. Sharmistha Gooptu. And also a small gesture of love for the moderator for his efforts. Thank you.